I've lived here my whole life, and I started my schooling at St. Nicholas, and all the way up to 5th grade, and then in 5th grade I went to Sequa, made my way to East Minico, and now finishing up here at Minico, hopefully. I play a lot of sports here at Minico, and my main sports I play are football and baseball is my favorite sport. And because of all the sports I've played throughout my life, I've learned a lot of life lessons that I'm going to use on and off the field. My paper was the life lessons learned through sports, so I think that all the lessons I learned up through till this point has helped me write that paper, and it has also brought up some new points that I didn't think about. And I also learned that the sports is not only about the physical talent of someone, it's also the mental toughness of that person as well. And for my physical project, I fixed up the local Babe Ruth baseball field. My thesis for my paper was athletes often realize the examples of life's hardships through the lessons learned through sports, and it teaches participants to change a negative into a positive with the proper mindset. Earl Graves is a successful businessman. He used to play basketball at UCLA, and he believes that his success now in business was helped by sports when he played, because he says that sports fed his competitive spirit and allowed him to accept or handle but never accept defeat, and the failures that he has from sports he learned from them, and now in business when he fails he also learns from those as well, so that helps him throughout his life. Some of the lessons I talked about in my paper were respect, and I believe sports teaches you a lot of respect because you have to respect that your coaches are giving you the right input and they're doing what's best for the team, even though you might not believe that's right. And you have to have respect in them and respect their authority. Also, sports teaches you hard work, because if you don't work hard and you don't try and become the best you can be, you'll get passed up by a teammate or other teams maybe. And I believe this goes into work as well, because if you're not doing your job and if you're slacking, you might not get that promotion, you might get fired, you might get passed up in the ranks, and you're not going to make it anywhere in life if you're staying in the same spot. Also, the frustration and disappointment in sports is always around. You're never going to be totally successful, and I think that goes along with anything in life, that sports gives you a good starting point for the bigger challenges you face later in life. Also, perseverance goes along with that, because even when you're down, maybe in baseball you're having a slump, you just have to keep with it and do your best and hopefully persevere and fight through it, which also can be used later in life. One of the main things I enjoyed talking about in my paper was clear vision in the process of reaching your goals, because you need to know where you want to be in the end, but you don't want to lose track of how you get there. You want to focus on the process of that, and I thought that was interesting writing about as well. Also, humility. This is another thing I wrote about, and I believe that if you do something well on the field, that people will come to you to acknowledge it. You don't need to acknowledge other people about it and tell them about it. And I believe it makes you a better friend and classmate if you don't go around being cocky and let other students come and tell you about your achievements on the field. And teamwork is also a huge thing in sports, because it only takes one person to not reach your goals, and that goes along in the workforce as well. If you're all working for a company, it's only going to take one person to slip up, and your whole project might be done for. The main thing that I learned writing this paper was that the clear vision in the process of your goals, because I feel like I fall into that category at times where I know where I want to be, but I don't know exactly how I'm going to get there. And I think that this is going to help me throughout life, having a process, and don't lose sight of that along the way. And also that to go up higher in sports is not only how talented you are, but also the mental side and how you adjust to adversity and things like that, which I believe will help me later in life as well. For my physical project, I took care of the local Babe Ruth baseball field, which was becoming very run down. And the purpose was this, is I wanted a safe place for the young athletes to play, because I believe that if you have a nice field to play on, you're more apt to want to try harder and more excited to play when you have a nice field. And I love baseball, so this project fit well with my personal likes as well. So here's some pictures of how the field, how it started before I did anything to it. Up here in the left, there's the base path, and you can see how the grass is growing over onto the dirt, and it's not very straight. Also, there's leaves crammed up against the fence, and I had to dig those out. Branches were sticking out from the people's houses behind the fence, and there's weeds all along the fence like this. And the grass was not very green as well, and there's weeds all along the fences as well where the mower can reach. So what I did is every week I would mow the lawn. I would mow the infield really short so the ground balls would be easier to field. I also edged the base paths that were crooked, and I had an edger machine, and I edged the fields, the base paths and the bases so they looked more appealing to the audiences and was better looking. I also hauled off all the leaves that were crammed under the fence and hauled those off to the dump. I cut the branches down that were sticking through, that were interfering with the play. I used fertilizer on the grass, which you'll see later how much of a difference that made. And I also edged the sidewalk by the tennis courts. There's tennis courts next to the field, and the fans have to walk on that sidewalk to get to the bleachers, and I wanted it more appealing for the fans as well. So I edged that base path to make it look a lot better. I used a weed eater to get the weeds where the mower couldn't reach. I added dirt to the mound and the base paths, and I smoothed that out and tamped that down so it was easy to play on. And also I would water the field. I would set sprinklers out in dry spots, and there was a main sprinkler that would go around the field as well. And here's some pictures of me working on my project. Up here in the left is the edging machine, and you can see here how much of a difference that made. And I would have to take the sod out that was still in the ground. Here I'm adding dirt to the mound. Over here this is the fertilizer that I spread and the branches that I cut down, and also all the weeds and things that after I edged the field, that I had to haul off into the dump. And the challenges and the stretch that I had in this project was mainly time management, because I played baseball during the summer and I was also an umpire, so at times it was hard to find time to do all of this. And I also had to work around practice times for the teams who played on that field, which always is hard to do sometimes. Also the supplies, like fertilizer, I actually had that donated by Valley-wide, so that was nice of that. And other supplies, I was fortunate my dad had those, so he let me use a lot of that, so that was nice. Also, edging the base paths was probably the hardest part that I didn't expect, because I forgot that after you edge it, the roots are still in the ground and you have to rip those out, and then they left big holes and I had to fill those in afterwards. And turning on the water, sometimes the water wouldn't be on and I'd have to go manually turn it on, and sometimes that was a pain, or the city would come to me and get mad at me because they thought I was just a kid out on the street, so I had to explain to them what I was actually doing. Here's some pictures of my final project. You can see how much more green it is on the field from the fertilizer, and here's just the pictures of the base paths and how straight they are compared to how they started. So after high school, I plan on attending Corbin University, and I was blessed enough to have an academic and an athletic scholarship to play baseball there. So that's pretty exciting, and it'll help pay for college, which is nice. It's a small private school in Salem, Oregon, and I plan to study physical therapy. Thank you for your time. Are there any questions?
Can you do me a favor and go back to a slide?
Yes. Which one?
I'll have to see it to tell you which one it is. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Right there. Anybody else noticing something about that?
Oh, the sod. Sod. S-O-D. Is how you spell sod?
You said S-A-W-E-D.
I did not.
You sawed it rather than a piece of sod.
I did not see that. Good eyes there, Mr. Bailey.
Are you
You
painting
know,
the
he
big
has to
bucks?
find one thing. He just absolutely has to.
Are there any more questions?
No, very good.
Excellent, Daniel. I do have one question now, thinking about your involvement in sports and being a part of these teams, and especially, you've done that all the way through from the time you were just a little boy, but I've also had the opportunity to watch you grow and mature, and definitely you have natural leadership. I really, you just do. But can I ask, what, from your perspective, is the most difficult part about being a leader?
I'd say probably telling other kids that that's not the right thing, even though that it might be funny or everyone's doing it, it's hard not to do it. And staying out of that is sometimes hard, but in the long run it makes you feel better by yourself. I think so.
Okay, well, you've done that on more than one occasion, so I know I appreciate that.
What was the greatest accomplishment from everything that you did? What was the main thing that you brought out or came up with on your project?
I think from my physical project, I put a lot of pride into it, and seeing the result at the end was pretty cool to see how much of a difference it made. And there's also, I would go to the games and parents would tell me like how much of a difference it made, and that made me feel pretty cool. So I like that part.
Great. I'm going to drive by that field. I haven't been over there in a long time. I really haven't, but it definitely looks right. I love this quote that you can find out everything you need to know about a person in 4 hours. These are her integrity, patience, temperament, and enthusiasm, among other traits. I like that.
Going along with that, Daniel, I wanted to ask you a question about your paper, and about your paper was about the life lessons that you learned through sports, and I wanted you to just share a personal experience as you're a ball player yourself. Give us that personal experience that you had while playing ball that taught you a lesson.
I'd say that my parents, ever since I was young, told me to never like brag about stuff. And when I was young, Dane Bronnet was kind of like my role model, and she would always tell me how he was a good student and he was humble and things like that. And I think that that's probably the biggest thing I've taken out of it, and hopefully I do the same as how they taught me.
Great. Thank you. And don't think that that's not something that other people notice too, because that's interesting you would say that about Dane, because there's something that he did, I remember as a senior that I still remember, and there's something that that I will remember, not just one thing actually, but it really does mean a lot to the people who watch you as adults, and it means, like, even more sometimes to those kids coming up that look to you to be a role model, and I'm glad that you recognize that. Wow, you set a very high bar here. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.